Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome dear viewers from around the world to another thought-instilling episode of ReBridges. I am your host Rizwan Mumtaz Ali from Pakistan. Viewers, as you know, in ReBridges we talk to some of the outstanding Muslim intellectuals, scholars, academics, experts and thinkers of diverse nationalities on the real issues and challenges being faced by the contemporary world of Islam. Our objective is to connect and interact with the Muslim intelligentsia and academia so as to create a collective pool of knowledge and wisdom that is capable of creating new pathways of peace, progress and prosperity for the 1.97 billion Muslims of the world today, and which can guide the Muslims of the world in the true light of Islam to help overcome their most difficult challenges. I must say that in ReBridges we have been very fortunate to have met with and interviewed some highly inspiring and knowledgeable Muslim men and women thus far, who, guided by the Quran and imbued with the love and devotion to the last Prophet of Allah, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are blazing new trails of knowledge and wisdom in their respective disciplines and domains. They've indeed given us great hope in the bright future of the Muslim world. As Iqbal, the poet of the East, says, "Nahi hai Iqbal na umeed apni kishte veeran se, zara nam ho to ye mitti bahut sarkhez hai saki." But of his barren land, Iqbal has not lost hope. A little moist, and this soil can be extremely fertile. O Saki, O Allah. Viewers, today the Muslim world with its incessant material and human resources is struggling against various challenges. Challenges that range from economic and political deprivation to cultural and intellectual starvation. But sadly, the moisture that can slake the parched lips of our fertile soil, as Iqbal envisions it, that revitalizing moisture is not presently manifesting in our lives. Viewers, this makes us ask that one question over and over again, that why the Muslim world, which enlightened the entire globe with its civilizational excellence for over a millennium, lost its leading edge, and why, unlike their ancestors, today's Muslim world is steeped into economic, political, moral, cultural, and intellectual backwardness. What went wrong and why? Many great Muslim thinkers have addressed themselves to this most important question. Allama Iqbal, Jamaluddin Afghani, Halim Pasha, Ali Shariati, Maulana Abul Ala Maududi, and a host of other Muslim minds have reflected on the question of how to steer the Muslim world out of its present decay and reconstruct it back to its original cultural excellence, guided by the Quran and the life and teachings of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is this not an irony of sorts, that we, the Muslims, the inheritors of the greatest civilization the world has ever seen and which has made the greatest impact on the scientific, intellectual, economic and cultural development of mankind, we are oblivious of our own inheritance? Imagine for a moment the Islamic civilization that flourished from 8th to 14th century with all its scientific, social, political, economic and philosophic excellence. If for a moment this period is erased from world history, the whole world will agree that the present day world would still be loitering in pitch darkness of ignorance and primitivism. So the next obvious question that comes to mind is that if the Muslims in the past could scale and sustain their position at the highest point of civilizational excellence for almost a millennium, can the Muslim world today retrace its steps and readopt the principles, precepts and values of this grand heritage and regain its lost place in the world of modern knowledge, inquiry, innovation and discovery? On the other hand, it is said that the West, through its centuries of colonial hegemony, has divided the mundane and divine and sacred and secular into separate compartments and consequently has given birth to the greatest divide in the history of mankind, the divide of the West and the rest. Is this divide a permanent divide? Today, to answer this and many other questions, we are extremely fortunate to have with us a world-renowned Muslim scholar, social scientist, educationist par excellence from Pakistan, Professor Anis Ahmed Sahib. Many Pakistanis, besides Muslims around the world, have been inspired by his views and writings. Professor Anis Ahmed Sahib has authored books on diverse Islamic subjects which are not only widely read, but are also included in the curricula of various universities around the world. An Islamic scholar of the highest caliber, Dr. Sahib was also recognized for his efforts at the Islamization of knowledge and the importance of new perspectives as a means of reforms in the Muslim world. In this role, he is an advocate of moderation, plurality of cultures, and human rights. He specializes in Islamic studies and comparative religion. Dr. Sahib is the Vice Chancellor of Rifa International University, Islamabad. He's also the founder of Dawa Academy and the Department of Social Sciences at International Islamic University, Islamabad, and the Faculty of Islamic Revealed Knowledge at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. May I also mention here that Professor Anis Ahmed Sahib is the brother of Professor Khurshid Ahmed Sahib, another world-renowned Islamic scholar, activist, economist, philosopher, and a politician from Pakistan. Professor Anis Ahmed Sahib, welcome to ReBridges, sir.
Thank you very much.
But after this longish introduction, sir, I think we shouldn't waste your further precious time. And let me begin with asking you the question that I had placed in my intro earlier on. And with your in-depth knowledge and understanding of Islam, sir, and other religions, and in the light of your lifelong services towards promotion of social sciences in the Muslim world, and last but not least, your untiring efforts at reconstructing the religious thought in the Muslim world and the Islamization of knowledge. My first question to you, sir, is that the Islamic civilization that had reached the zenith of its excellence between the 18th and 16th century in science, education, economy, culture, and deen, why it lost its leading edge and went into an economic, political, moral, cultural, and intellectual, as you put it, tailspin?
Thank you very much. I think to begin with, I would like to approach the issue slightly differently. Sorry. Instead of looking for what went wrong, I would like to understand what was behind the rise and progress of the Muslim Ummah. Perhaps due to shortage of time, I can summarize in 4 brief points. Firstly, I believe the rise of Islamic civilization and Muslim culture was based on Tawhidic concept given by Islam. Islam did not claim to be a new religion. It only came to revive Abrahamic faith, which was true Tawheed or oneness and unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that has been understood as a theology. My approach is different. I do not look at Tawheed as theology, but I understand it as a revolutionary principle which brings not only unity in life, unity in universe, unity in mankind, but also takes care of all forms of dualisms to be eliminated. Therefore, first cause of rise of Muslims was when they developed a vision of life which was Tawhidic, a vision of life which did not accept divide in life, which considered a holistic view of human being, human personality, society, and the global community. Secondly, it was based on primary emphasis given on education. The revelation began with a declaration of not only recitation but reading and understanding and learning. Iqra is a comprehensive term. It's not confined to one single aspect. So this education, which is not just information, but learning, knowledge creation, and that too, knowledge which is beneficial, ilm and nafi', not just knowledge which is for the sake of knowledge. Thirdly, the principle was from day one, in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to have an innovative approach which we call ijtihad, and Prophet endorsed that in his own lifetime. It's a very serious confusion and misunderstanding that ijtihad began sometime later, after 100 years or so, when Muslims were learning from other sources and then they thought, let's use some reason. No, this is baseless. The fact of the matter is, the Prophet, peace be upon him, appoints Muaz ibn Jabal as his Qadi of Yemen, and then asks him, how will you sort out matters there? And Muaz says, I will use the Quran. That should have been enough. The Prophet asks, what about if you don't find something clearly in the Quran, not very specifically mentioned? Then the answer was, I'll go to your Sunnah. Again, this was enough for us. But again, Prophet asked, if you don't find something there, what do you do? His answer was, Ishahada bil Rai. And Prophet said something which is not quite often referred. We stop at that point in giving the narration. The Prophet said, may Allah be pleased with the servant who said what pleased Allah and His Prophet. Which means, when you said, I will do ijtihad, you please me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala both. Now this was the third important act. And the fourth was the well-being and welfare of the ummah. That means an ummatic understanding and not an individualist understanding. Not just individuals, not the so-called entrepreneurial approach, but an approach of ummah. Now these four pillars, in my view, were the basis for rise of Muslim power, Islamic civilization and culture. And again, I differentiate between Islamic culture and what's been popularly known as Muslim civilization. So with these four, when we were holding them, following them, we were progressing. When we divided on the first concept of Tawheed, which was Allah's sovereignty should be in economic matters, in social matters, in political matters, in cultural matters, in speech, in everything. When we lost that concept and we came with a dualistic and sometimes polytheistic approach without understanding it, then we deviated from Tawheed. Tawheed is the power.
If I may ask, what were the other deities that we created that parallel the supremacy of Allah Almighty?
The most important and the most disaster deity was nationalism. Islam came to demolish tribalism and nationalism. The nationalism of soil, of color, of language. That's why you find that throughout history of mankind, not Muslim history of mankind, black color has been associated with deprivation. In American culture, if you call someone nigger, it's a extremely aggressive term. But Afro-Americans are part of culture, and yet that concept of being nigger has never been removed from their memory in 200 years of their history. It has remained there. Islam came and wiped it out, completely wiped. The Quran and Prophet wiped out, and that's the meaning of Tawheed, that you are no more going to be ethnically or racially. If we use more exact words for Eurocentrism, this is a racist culture, which we call Eurocentrism. It's a race-based culture, where language and color is base of supremacy, and we don't realize that. So the other area was, besides nationalism of soil and language and color, that Muslims became very much self-centered. That led to their breakup politically, economically, and socially. Tawheed meant unification of hearts and minds and feelings, unification of direction. You have one direction, and that direction is you have to create a society which creates fairness, justice, honesty, openness, accommodation, respect for people. At the same time, all these values we have mentioned a while ago, these values lead you to success in life hereafter. Because life hereafter is not a esoteric concept. It is something which is very much concrete and reality. So life,
if I may ask, was it, did the fault lie within, or like some of the conspiracy theorists, one can assume that there was an outside conspiratorial element in it as well?
Well, that is how many non-Muslims, Bernard Lewis and others, have gone. His whole book, What Went Wrong with Muslims, and many other writings by Western writers focus on Muslim phobias. Just as you mentioned, that it is Jews, it is colonialism, it is whatnot, and other areas. My approach is very simple. I believe I should first find out what was the moving force behind rise. And if that moving force behind rise is revived, then we must rise.
So,
there cannot be decline.
Tawheed, knowledge, seeking knowledge, ijtihad, and welfare.
And ummatic vision. Ummatic vision means that you are a group not confined to yourself, but you are there for the welfare of community. Ummah refers to Muslim community, but at a global community is also used in the Quran. So when we say ummatic approach, it means a collective approach, which unfortunately is exploited today in the name of globalization. Globalization is not globalization. It is capturing of resources in the name of globalization by a imperialist mind of Eurocentrism. We never talk about that. We always cover it up under euphemisms, beautiful words. So Islam came with ummatic vision, which meant that if you are in Morocco or in Indonesia, makes no difference. Whether you are coming from Africa or America, makes no difference. You may be Irish, makes no difference. But you are a human being. So therefore,
today, we're almost, including Palestine, 57 or 58 odd Islamic countries. We have very clear geographical boundaries, and therefore, in every Muslim country, there is its own unique brand of nationalism in vogue. Now, you say that the Ummah will have to... Ummah rose above these ethnic and cultural and racial divisions, and therefore attained that excellence. But sir, how can the present day Muslim world, without its geographical boundaries, retrace, readopt, regain, and revive its lost status? Iqbal does prescribe, if I may, sir, Iqbal does prescribe the construction of religious thought in Islam as the way forward. And you, for one, have also underlined the importance of the Islamization of knowledge. So, how can the present day divisions, how can these yawning gaps, geographical gaps, and various other identity-based, cultural, ethnic, etc., identities-based gaps, how can we plug them in today's day and age?
Well, very simply, I believe that Muslim world has to first discover how a new map was drawn and it came into existence. It was Sykes-Picot plan that gave us the so-called Syria, the so-called Egypt, the so-called Jordan, the so-called Iran, and so on and so forth. All these territories were one single unit. But
under the
colonizers too, French and British, jointly agreed that let's draw a new map and give them national identities. So they keep on fighting till the day of judgment. First, Muslim world has to discover what has happened to it and on which it feels proud. Every university in Muslim world has taught them, you are Egyptian, you are Sudanese, you are Iranian, you are Egyptian, so on and so forth. And that is what has been Eurocentric approach put in the mind and soul of Muslim world. Unless Muslim world realizes that nationalism is its enemy and they have to grow above all these finitudes and discover their identity in the force of Tawheed, they cannot progress. Because Tawheed was the basis of progress in Makkah, in Medina, in the whole Muslim history. So long Muslims said Allah is greatest and money is not greatest. Territory is not greatest. Language is not greatest. But Allah is greatest. One single statement, they were able to rise.
May I dare to say, sir, that we are all, alhamdulillah, believers. We believe in the oneness of Allah and the finality of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But have we converted our faith into a personal quest instead of a collective quest? And have we turned religion into a personal affair rather than an affair which pertains to not just our immediate society but the world at large?
Well, let me dare to say that when we say we believe in Allah and the Prophet, I don't think we are very much fair. If we say we believe in Allah and Prophet, then I should not link my economy with what is given as quote unquote help or aid or charity based on high interest rates or soft interest rates. I should not bow down to a group of people who have never used their veto power against the ethnically oppressed people in the world, the big institution of United Nations. I think we have all these gods. And then if we say we believe in Allah and Prophet Muhammad, it's a very tall claim. I believe that we have not been able to understand the meaning of Tawheed. Tawheed means that we liberate ourselves from all man-made institutions and gods to which we bow down. Which economy does not take into consideration Wall Street? Which economy doesn't take into consideration what is happening in the stock market in London or Paris? Everything is Eurocentric, focused on the interest of others served by Muslims. Therefore, first Muslims have to realize their very existence as so-called nations is a creation of others, not theirs. Allah wanted them to be an ummah, not these tribes and nationalities which are there. Secondly, the Muslim world has to come out of the Eurocentric empiricist paradigm. The empirical paradigm given by the Europe is that knowledge, epistemology is what we define. And Muslim world has to take a different approach. to which you referred earlier, when we talk about Islamization of knowledge, I'm not saying that we begin a book of chemistry with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and end with Alhamdulillah. No, what I mean is that the chemistry which is making me a chemist who is more concerned about patent right and then manipulate patent right for selling my chemical 200, 500 times higher than the price, which we call entrepreneurial approach. Instead of that, I should become a chemist who is aware of poverty of people, who is aware of his own investment, who is aware of his patent, but he wants to use his patent for the welfare of people, not for his own welfare. Therefore, it is not Islamization, it is decolonization. When decolonize social sciences, that is the beginning of Islamic Renaissance. We need to decolonize sociology, decolonize psychology, decolonize economics. All disciplines need to be decolonized. When you talk about development,
the decolonization of education is the way forward. But the truth of the matter is that if education is adopted, is considered as the most effective means of reforming the Muslim world, but the fact of the matter is, the unfortunate aspect of this is that today there's not a single university in any Muslim country that has been ranked in the top 500 universities of the world. And then there's not even a single Muslim country which is in the list of nations that have developed education systems which are contemporary and tailored according to the needs of their people. So, and secondly, the marginalization of sections of the society and the sexes as well, the gender discrimination. Like the Holy Quran and the Hadiths clearly say that the acquisition of knowledge is obligatory for women in the same way as in the case of men. But we see Muslim women being prevented from acquiring knowledge and education in countries like Afghanistan. So what would you say to all that, sir?
Well, first and foremost, I believe that we are in a vicious circle and we need to break that. To break that, I recommend that Muslim scholars need to realize how much colonized they are in their approach, and unless we decolonize our mind and disciplines, we cannot move forward. Secondly, we need to invest in youth and share with them not only these ideas, but come up with new texts. We at Rifa International University have produced a textbook on Islamic economics and finance with Islamic perspective, with a change paradigm. And we are working on other texts as well. We are just a university, but I am sure there are others as well. Coming back to your observation about education in the Muslim world and elsewhere, I think it's a rather underestimation. There are universities in Muslim world which are renowned for their research work. The problem is that we only categorize that research which is written in English language and which is published in those journals which are listed by Scopus or other organizations. Consequently, you have eliminated a huge number of people of the world who are not English speaking. And that's what we call impact factor. That's what we call enlightenment. That's what we call research. Now, if you just compare demographically, China's population and population of Europe, how many articles are written in Chinese universities and never known by the Western world, never ranked, considered academic. Now, this is a hegemony of what I call colonial mind. Unless hegemony is broken, we cannot think fairly. But therefore, it's an underestimation. It's
the
underestimation.
Chinese, despite the fact that they're carrying out their research in the Chinese language, they're contributing towards the development of China and what China is today. On the other hand, if we are doing research work and good research work, what good is, what benefit are we drawing from it as the members of the Islamic world?
You see, unfortunately, the problem is that Muslim minds are used for the benefit of the non-Muslim world. I have lived in America for over 12 years, teaching there, doing research, getting my PhD from there. And I know from my personal experience, there is no single institution in America where Muslim mind is not behind. Take NASA, take hospitals, take spaghetti highways, take the Sears Towers, anything that has impact in society there has a Muslim mind behind. This migration of Muslim mind from Muslim countries to the West has contributed, just as the migration of Jewish mind at one time helped North America developing its scientific programs. Unfortunately, Muslim world has not been able to attract back its potential. I believe we in Pakistan can run our universities with our best resources. When we bring them back from there, you need not go to Harvard and Princeton and MIT. Those persons who are product of those universities and who are teaching there, if they come and teach in their own country, why we cannot produce scientists and everything? But the problem is, which I mentioned earlier, as fourth pillar, absence of ummatic vision and individual benefit. Now, Muslim world, including Pakistanis, they're individualists. They go for individual benefit. If in Pakistan you have political crisis, then you find 70 lakh youth migrating.
Yes.
Why? Because individual benefit. Not for the Ummah, not for Pakistan as such. If they were raised as Pakistanis, they will like to live and die here and not go out.
Absolutely.
But they have been raised.
Absolutely.
They have been raised with an education system which tells them where is Oxford Street, where is Piccadilly Circus, who is Humpty Dumpty. These are their heroes from their early childhood till they grow up. Their vision, their imagination is captured by that. So we have not made Muslims loyal to their own soil, to their own community globally. And
It is
these
so
texts and
unfortunate,
these
sir. It is so
cartoons,
unfortunate
these
that
cartoons and
bodies of
everything is
Muslims-
used all over the world.
Ji, ji.
So unless we face and address these issues, which are ground realities, we cannot progress. I don't want to be hypothetical. I'm very much down to earth and I'm giving you very simple solutions. If we in Pakistan or in a Muslim country just decolonize our policy planners, not of today, but of 20 years from now, by educating youth.
But
If
this
our
requires a
youth,
political will, sir. Where is that?
well,
political will?
that, no doubt that has some value, but as Vice Chancellor, I am independent. No one can dictate on me about my classroom. If I want to introduce critical thinking, no one can stop me. If I want Islamic ethical values in my university, no one can stop me. I think we need to take some bold steps and not to wait till the bureaucrats re-embrace Islam.
So
No,
when you
I
say
don't believe
we,
in that.
who do you refer to as we?
A single person who is aware of this dilemma, of this shortcoming, has to come forward. A
But
person
who's
may
going to
not be a
connect them?
PhD.
How will they be connected?
The easiest way today is media. Media has become educator, and therefore I believe that all those minds and all those persons who are disturbed and some are depressed, which I believe is anti-Islamic approach. Islam has no place for depression and frustration, but some people get frustrated. So, because of seeing things going wrong, now, all such persons need to be approached through a very simple dialogue with them, raising these issues which you have raised in this conversation, and then telling them, you may be a matriculate mother or a father, or even you may not have gone to a college or university or school, but there are certain basic principles that you should apply in your home. And one principle is that if you receive a telephone call, then don't tell your child to inform the person you are not there, but tell honestly, I'm here, but I cannot attend right now. I can talk to you after half an hour. What's wrong in that? You see, this is one single thing that can change the whole society.
So, if I
Lie,
may ask,
deception.
if I may ask, sir, that the political institutions are essentially responsible to introduce policies that work for the breadth of the society as well as the needs and interests of the individual citizens. Do you think that the policymakers in the Muslim world are up to that challenge?
Not at all. I've said a while ago that unless policymakers re-embrace Islam, unless they rediscover Islam, unless they decolonize their minds, because they are developed in a culture, bureaucratic culture, which is a heritage of the colonizer. Secondly, they are very much influenced by those charms and attractions given to them and their children, that they can get educated in Princeton and Harvard if they just follow what we are telling them to make as policies. Now, all those things are ground realities all over the world. Therefore, we need to forget about present situation. My concern is, if I am given authority in a university, I create environment where my faculty members and my students become hardworking, honest, truthful. They understand meaning of Tawheed. They become critical thinkers. Now that is the beginning of Ummah. I believe in quality. I don't believe in quantity. A small number of people with commitment and concern. You think the Pakistan atomic plan was made by a huge amount and huge resources of people, a country which was counted as underdeveloped? If that can build with the help of commitment and lack of resources, then this country has every potential to make revolutions. I believe starting small. I don't believe in first bringing a political change and then starting reform in the country. No, I believe as an educationist, wherever I have authority, wherever I can reach, I should go and voice my views and share my views and present from my behavior, not just my oration, but my behavior, how things can be done. I go to my office early morning and leave late evening. I'm not a conventional vice chancellor who just signs some promotion papers and then drinks coffee whole day. I believe in hard work, and people see me, they will learn from me. If I talk about it and I'm not hardworking myself, how can I compel them? So it's by persuasion, by example. It's very simple.
Setting examples. And that has always been the hallmark of the Muslim society of the past, where we excelled in various disciplines of knowledge. But coming to another aspect of the same issue, at present, the terms fundamentalism, extremism, radicalism, and terrorism have been made synonymous with Muslims, and it is a stumbling block in our growth, major block. The Western media has created a stereotypical image of Muslims as a gun-toting, violent, extremist, intolerant group of backward people. In your many publications, you've discussed modernism as a means of reform in the Muslim world. You've also highlighted the importance of moderation and the need for new perspectives and a dialogue between the West and the Muslim world in the context of the clash of civilizations. But on the other hand, in your own words, it would be naive to fight this false impression with themes of soft image and enlightened moderation through vulgarization of the electronic media, as you put it. So, what are your concepts of modernism and moderation for the Muslim world? And also in the light of your concept of media vulgarization. Please enlighten us with your views on the role of the media, both the traditional as well as the modern digital and social media.
Yeah. Excuse me. First and foremost, I believe the Quran and Sunnah provide us the perfect model of moderation and balance. One of the basic themes in the Quran is adl. And adl means when you put something in its proper place without going to extremes. The word fundamentalism has its origin in Christian theology, where some Christian groups of literalist Christians came up with the idea that Christianity is to be understood literally and not allegorically or rationally. And then the word got used, and it was only in 1950s for the first time it was applied to Muslims. Moderation and balance is the essence of the Quran. The Quran tells us, and it is the Prophet, that you should not make prayer whole night, but make part of it. The Quran talks and tells us you should not shout, Allah listens your whisper. The Quran says you should not walk in a way which is showing your pride and arrogance, but walk humbly. Have a good pace of walking, which means whether you are walking on floor or walking industrial market or doing any kind of thing, you have to have moderation balance. Therefore, if we look into Quran and prophetic behavior, that provides a modality how we develop it. The other extreme is that in the name of mysticism, people thought that let us leave the world and go to a forest or a desert or a cave and stay there for 7 years or 17 years and come out with the resource of knowledge. Is that moderation? Is that balance? Is that what Prophet example gives us? That is extremism. But I have never heard anyone calling mysticism extremism. It is always given to Muslims as an alternate of extremism. Therefore, the so-called soft image given by the West for last 25 years is Muslims should forget about Quranic ayat, but they should go for mysticism, which that is moderation. Now, based on the Quran, mystical approach of leaving the world is not moderation, but extremism. Therefore, we need to understand the Quran properly. Secondly, the Quran invites the whole of mankind and says, I am not a book of Muslims. Islam is not a faith of Muslims, but Islam is for the humanity. Unfortunately, it's Muslims who think it's their monopoly. Who made it a monopoly? It's not their monopoly. The Quran says, Hudal Linnas. The Quran says this book is guidance for the mankind. The objectives of Sharia, on which we have beautiful books. Why Sharia is for Muslims? I raised this issue once in Malaysia. I asked some of my people in a lecture, Chinese and Tamils and others, all teachers of law in a faculty of law. I asked them that do you think if you are living in Malaysia and your neighbor is a Muslim and this Muslim beats his wife, is it good? I said no. Then do you think if a Muslim has a neighbor who is Christian and he shouts at his wife, is that good? So no. So Sharia says that you should protect dignity and honor, and that applies to everyone. So do you think Sharia is for Muslims or for all people? And they had to say, yes, what you are saying is for all Muslims. Should we say that when a Muslim steals, cut the hand of Muslim? But when a Christian or Buddhist steals, salute him for his cleverness and for his mastery of breaking in and doing robbery. No, we should have same thing. Therefore, it's very big misconception that Sharia laws or Sharia concepts are for Muslims. I think the Quran and Sharia provides basic human needs to be fulfilled ethically and morally. These are ethical principles, moral principles, which apply to everyone. So moderation means finding out that ethical approach of the Quran, which across the board applies, which is not confined to Muslims. If the Quran says you find one or both of your parents in old age living with you, don't say oof to them. What does that mean? That means I have two persons who raised me as their child, who spend their nights awake, vigil, to console me when I was crying and asking for cleaning me. But when they become old, I tell them there is a senior citizen home, please go and stay there. I will visit you once a month and send you once a year a card, hi dad, I love you. Is that a human behavior? Or the Quran says, when you find one or both of them in your home, don't say if to them and bow down to them, help them, support them, do everything to please them. Now, is this moderation or extremism? Is this humanism or...
Sir. And it's a path
is this extremism?
That the entire mankind
extremism?
Should adopt.
Is it extremism?
Yes, sir. Now, sir, another question. In fact, another observation, and I would request your take on it. For the past 3 decades, Muslims have been portrayed as fundamentalists and extremists. Certain sections of the Muslim world have been dubbed as such. But now we see an alarming increase in racist and right-wing politics in the West. In Europe, for instance, there are right-wing political parties that are now coming into power. And this growing trend is targeted against Muslims. You were mentioning earlier, and suddenly in my mind came the image of bodies of Muslim men and women, dead Muslim men and women washing on Italian shores, washing ashore on European shores. Now, this divide, where we were considered as, where we were targeted as an extremist group of people, but now this tendency is fast gaining roots in the West. And it is, as I said earlier, it is targeted essentially against Muslims. Their entire political narrative is based against the influx of Muslims, the Muslim migrants. And their reaction is also very extreme. Be it the case of the blasphemous cartoons or the desecration of the Holy Quran or the discriminatory laws against hijab. Now, how should the Islamic world respond to this wave of Western Islamophobia? And then, can the voices of sanity and reason in the West collaborate with the Muslim world to check and bring an end to this trend in the West?
I will respond by 3 simple points.
Ji.
Firstly, I think Western scholars who are sincere and serious need to consider the phenomena themselves and analyze it in a larger historical framework to understand that if populist approach and rather racist approach is encouraged, it will not confine itself to acting against Muslims only. But racism is bound to tear the basic fiber of any society. And therefore, within their own community, there are bound to be schisms and groups who will act against each other. So it is a self-destruction of future if they allow this to flourish in their own territories. Secondly, I believe that Muslims have to play a very positive role in first trying to understand their own book, Al-Quran, and then sharing that with others. I take just one example. The Quran, for example, says, if it was not for allowing you to make jihad, then the places of worship of Christians, Jews, Muslims and others, the words used are temples, mosques, synagogues and places of worship would have been destroyed.
Yes.
Which means that one major objective of jihad is to ensure proper rights of religious practice, cultural rights of people. And I have not found in my 50 years of scholarship in comparative religion a single text in any world scripture where the name of place of worship of other community is given. It's Quran alone which says the church, synagogue and mosque, these are to be protected by you through jihad. Now, what else can be an evidence? Now, how many Muslims are aware of this Quran? How many Muslims are told that the Quran says, kill the mushrik? No doubt the Quran says, kill the mushrik. But where does it say? It says that now those who drove you out of Makkah, they have been defeated. Now they are under protection, but we allow them to take wherever they want to go, and 4 months are given as duration for them. After 4 months, if you find them in the sacred territory of the haram, then you go and kill them. Now the whole scenario is completely disregarded. Only one word, kill. Is it intellectual honesty? Is it fairness? Is it doing justice to a text? Therefore, unfortunately, and many Muslims don't know that. Unfortunately, the problem is that Muslims themselves have not been able to study their scripture, their faith, and they have not been able to present it.
Yes.
So, second point was that Muslims have to create a dialogue where they share Quran and Sunnah directly with those who are confused and who are not understanding Islam. And thirdly, I believe that they need to have an open house approach globally, which means that my house,
open house approach. Now, the Muslim world, the 1.97 billion Muslims of the world, the majority of them are poverty stricken. Although we have incessant material resources, human resources, there are some highly wealthy OIC Muslim countries who are very wealthy, and they're famous for their towering buildings and for spending hundreds of billions of dollars on football events, whereas the majority of Muslim countries are poverty stricken. And you say that we need to have an open house and an open door sort of thinking. Then why are those resources denied to the Ummah? Why are such monies not diverted towards the collective good of the Ummah? Why on football events and why on towering buildings? And why not on the Rohingyas or the poverty-stricken Muslims around the world?
I think it's not a matter of either or. Islam does not want just to not to have high towered buildings, but Islam wants to have all that besides other teaching to be implemented at the same time. Those persons who are rich, they can build as high buildings as they want to satisfy their ego, but at the same time, it's their obligation to take care of those who are dying out of hunger. Nevertheless, I believe that definition of poverty needs to be revisited. Pakistan is supposed to be a poor country, but it is the top country in philanthropic activity. Those who are making comparative studies, they tell us that Pakistanis contribute highest level of their resources for the help of needy people.
So we are a charitable people. Yes, agreed. We are a charitable people. They say,
let me come. When we talk about resources, then unfortunately, Muslim world, because of its naivety, has not been able to realize its richness. We have biggest resources of oil in Muslim country. Pakistan has energy resource in terms of coal, third largest coal reserve in world. But are Pakistanis and are others aware of this big resource to be used with reason, with proper appreciation, proper planning and proper technology? The problem is not just resources. Our poverty is not of resource but of mind. I think if we are able
the poverty of mind, as you say, sir. Another question, sir, my last question to you, and it again pertains to the abundant resources that Allah Ta'ala has bestowed us with. The youth, the population, the global Muslim, in the global Muslim population, youth are in a very clear majority. And despite their immense abilities, a majority of them are living much below their true potential, for want of more opportunities. And as a result, they're getting frustrated. This huge resource is getting frustrated. And if this frustration is not channelized, this will bring more harm than good. So what is your solution to this core problem or obstacle, and what is your advice to the Muslim youth for overcoming this and other challenges that they face?
Well, my simple advice is that they should use their available resource with proper planning. If we properly plan, then we have enough resources to become independent and self-sufficient. But we never do that. What I'm saying is, in simple words, if we teach our youth to learn certain skills and certain areas they develop expertise, they do not need much money. Young people today are working in IT, and in IT they are able to earn much more than so-called conventional business. The problem is, education system in most of Muslim world has been introduced by the colonizers to create bureaucrats and subordinates, but not creative minds. We need to work on changing this approach and introduce in our education system an applied approach. I am not aware of out of 240 universities in Pakistan, how many universities take the time to carry their students of engineering to a high-tech place and let them see how technology works. Yeah. They teach them everything theoretically. We are not aware of proper educational methods. So we need to bring a basic change in our education system, not to become servant to technology, but to use technology for the progress of global ethical values of Islam. Secondly, we need to produce a new generation who should not be underestimating themselves. Muslims have underestimated themselves. They are told to look towards West. No, West itself is on decline. Indicators they are telling us of closure of hundreds of banks at one time, breakdown of economy and so on and so forth. So no need to look West, but develop our own terrain. And thirdly, I believe
we look within.
Thirdly, I believe what I said in the beginning.
But before I sign out, I would like to thank Professor Anis Ahmed Saib from my heart's depth for giving us his most incisive, enlightening, thought-provoking, knowledgeable and practical answers to some of the burning questions being raised in the Muslim world today. Sir, thank you very much, and we hope to talk to you more in our coming programs. Viewers, thank you and Assalamu Alaikum.